Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Just getting over there was a ton of rain here, so glad
Oh,
it's
yeah.
stopped finally.
Yeah, we're pretty much getting the same. It's been really windy the whole night, and now it's just like windy and rain and just disgusting.
Yeah, it finally got a little sun in here, which is nice. But we had it like the last 2 or 3 days, just bleh.
Yeah. I know the wind warning here is supposed to end at 4, but apparently it was just getting started yesterday and going through. So I don't know when it's gonna stop raining, but I don't mind the rain. I just hate it when it's cold.
Hmm.
So that's all right. Good day for studying.
Hmm. Yay. Uh-huh. Well, I was just looking over your spreadsheet from full length one, and I'm actually like really happy with um, bio. Like that was such a big
I
improvement.
know.
Um, and like, I don't know, I feel like we focused on bio and then your score went up like a lot. So we could just do that to all the sections.
I know.
Um, which is obviously the hard part. But I think just like if we kind of do what I was talking about in my text, like 3 days on this topic, 3 days on this topic, kind of like mini focused sessions, hopefully it can kind of distribute the wealth a bit.
hmm I
Because
know.
it,
I even finished bio on time. Like I had a few minutes just to go back on questions that I wasn't so sure about more for standalone. So that also was a bonus that everything ended up within the hour and 35. So that was good. And then
yeah,
psych, I had time left. So that's also an improvement with timing that it worked out as well. So it was just cars and chem phys. But I mean, timing also was fine with the other two. I was like either two passages or a passage and a half left
yeah,
after an hour and a half or hour and 35. But I felt terrible after chem and physics. I don't know why. I just felt like that was a disaster, but apparently it was okay. And then cars just actually demonstrated a disaster. And I have no idea why, but I know that it was more difficult um, to get the main idea across for some. It was like I was in a iffy groove at the beginning and I went through a few passages and then I could grasp the main idea and I did the best I can. And then I went to three passages where I had no idea. And I just felt like there was a lot more going on and I couldn't follow what was the main concept to be focused on. And then after those two or three, and then I got back into the last chunk, I jump around on cars a lot. And so I went back to the ones I didn't do, and then I was able to get a better idea of the main idea and the main concept. But apparently I was off. So I don't know what happened there, but I figured it's also maybe that Jack Weston to AAMC jump. But I mean, I've been doing well on Jack Weston passages. It's never, I mean, I think my accuracy, average accuracy is like a 70%.
hmm,
So I have no idea.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it could be just like sometimes literally if you psych yourself out, coming off of chem phys, it could just be kind of the headspace you were in.
Maybe, yeah.
We can like review over and then see because like if you really feel like it clicks like when we go back over it and review it and you're like, oh, this was I don't know how I missed this, um, then that's a good sign. But um, I don't know. I feel like what was the last cars that you did? You had like
Like from Jack.
125, like on the last test. Yeah. So like
Oh,
this was definitely more of a, I think,
a
right?
drop. Also, I was going through psych and I realized that one of my answers, I was so sure that I had a correct answer for one of them, but it marked it wrong and it somehow switched back if I accidentally did it. So I don't know what the heck it was, but I knew the concept and I swear to God, I had the correct answer and then it changed.
Mhm.
But if that were to be caught correctly, it would have been a 124 on cars, or I mean on psych and soc. So then it would have been a good 500 set on.
Okay.
But
I mean, yeah. And like, I don't know, seeing that cars and psych soc were a bit honestly, what I'm more focused on from this test was that bio went up by a lot.
I know, me too.
Um, so like definitely we got to nail down the psych search. Hopefully we'll make some of those connections with the terms that you highlighted. But like I think that seeing bio go up is a good sign. Sometimes I've had that happen before where like sometimes psych soc is like hit or miss, where it's like you do well or and there's just like some random like psych soc and you're like, I don't know what the heck was happening here.
Yeah, what is
But
this? What was it really wanting
yeah,
from me?
yeah. But
But also, this is one of the older exams too. So I'm also taking that with a grain of salt because so much can change from that first exam and based on they're scored. So, and it's a trend anyway. You want to see an upward trend from exam 1 to exam 5 anyway. So, but like you
mhm,
said, the main thing is that bio went up. And I think I was very surprised with that huge 6 point increase or however, or 5. But yeah,
mhm,
I just don't know. Um, based on, like you said, the 3 by 3 days, how would that also fit in? Because I'm doing a test every 2 weeks, and then also 4 of those days might be tougher because of work, and I'm just so drained by the end of the day. But I'm really trying my best to save as much energy as for like later, so I can at least do a little bit after work. So I'm trying to get into that mindset and train myself so I can at least in February incorporate those days as well, or even as soon as end of January. But
mhm. Yeah. Um, hmm. I'm gonna let's see. I'm looking at your little like week sketched out that we had from before.
that's on, I have so many tabs open. Oh, here you are. Okay.
The FC review schedule.
Um, personally, I think psych needs to be done every day no matter what, because it's just going to be terminology based. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course there's going to be very like less science review because I think that all of those will just come through questions um as well. Um
Mm-hmm.
Chem and physics, unless there's like a little concept that is just going to um little concepts that I missed that are more important to know because it's just a high yield topic. Um
Mm-hmm. I think if
but
we do like um because at this point it should mostly just be like questions, right?
yes,
Um, so like we had talked about finishing out UWorld kind of in the January-ish timeline and then kind of transitioning into AAMC from there. So if you're just doing UWorld questions every day, regardless of topic, I think that'll be helpful.
mhm,
And let's see, you rolled every day. Your psych social flashcards, like you said, you can just kind of keep those up to date. And then just like pick a topic for that day's you rolled. So today's could be all bio you rolled.
yeah,
And then like we said, incorporating in the AMC cars like
every other day.
practice. And that might help just to get you acclimated to that style of practice questions.
Right. Because there shouldn't be that much of a difference between Jack Western and Cars AMC, right? Or is there more of a
I
difference?
mean, there's like a slight difference. Like obviously it's written by different people. Sometimes it's just kind of the way you think about it. I don't know. It's like hard to put your finger on. But sometimes it's like the way you approach a Jack Weston question isn't the exact same way you might approach an AAMC question in terms of
Okay.
like your line of logic. But largely it's pretty similar and um like works well. But you know, there's still going to be a few differences that you can only really tell by doing the AMC passages and kind of reading their explanations
Right.
and making sure that you're going along with what they're saying.
Like their explanations suck, which is even worse.
They do, yeah. I don't even think the like whatchamacallit, I don't think the Jack Weston explanations for the AAMC material are even any better.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
But so I was going to look. Um, sort of. So they do have a bit. It could be helpful, it could be not helpful. Okay. So I think we should just like jump into cars and think about that. I kind of want to just go like glance at a passage and just look like, okay, how many questions were right versus not right out of this passage. Um, and as opposed to rereading it, I just want you to like say, here's the main idea that I kind of got from this, and then we'll break it down by question.
Okay.
Because I think that is probably the most efficient way to review. So let's, and hopefully you remember taking this.
You do or you don't?
I said, hopefully you do.
Oh, hopefully I do. I'm sorry.
Um, yeah, I have, let's see, we'll just do it in this mode. So this one, um, maybe we can do this as a dual screen. Okay, so passage one, we'll just
Oh,
kind
that's
of
exactly
glance.
what I have. Literally the same screen.
Yeah, basically the setup with the, oh, I guess we have to figure out what exactly you get right versus wrong. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Actually, I have another monitor next to me, so I'm just gonna use that as a spreadsheet. Hold on.
Oh, smart.
Honestly, my mom has been bugging me and be like, you need to have more than just your laptop as for setting because it's just gonna hurt your eyes and just trigger your migraines. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And also we're gonna be using a big monitor during test day anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so helpful just to have it even as a review. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Now we have a
Well, I'll
wide.
put, sorry, I'll put just the passage on my screen then if that works.
Yeah, go for it. And I'll go through the spreadsheet as we go through the passage and you can peek
Okay.
over whenever.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so passage one, we had 2 out of 5 questions.
Woo,
Um, let's see, what's this guy about? Democracy. Okay, so like a political science type passage.
which I'm not surprised I did poorly on, but it's fine. Also, it's
Hmm.
been a good consistency that it's been 5 minutes of reading and then 5 minutes of questions, like
Okay,
at least on
that's
Jack
good.
Western. So that's been kind of my balance and been able to like work with. So I think that's a decent. So then, yeah, it works out for 10 minutes for each passage, relatively, more or less. But
Hmm. The one thing I like about this view is I can see also what you highlighted. So we have here democracy fails to provide any guarantee against the formation of an oligarchical ruling clique. Um, It is easier to dominate a large crowd than a small audience. I'd say that's good. I feel like this is where it starts to get like, what are they even saying?
Precisely.
That enormous public meetings commonly carry resolutions by acclamation or by general assent. I'll be much more guarded. Okay. Kind of like big groups can get carried away, which makes sense if you think about like psych concepts and like group polarization. The individual disappears into a multitude, and therewith disappears also personality and sense of responsibility.
Yep.
So this is basically exactly describing like groupthink and
Oh,
group polarization. Okay. Sovereign masses are incapable of undertaking the most necessary resolutions.
like they can't come to a direct conclusion, or like they can't figure something out with the big groups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just not really able to make the decisions that need to be made. It is obvious that a gigantic number of persons belonging to a unitary organization cannot do any practical work using a system of direct discussion. So basically, it's like you can't have democracy in the sense of like every single person is trying, like putting in their voice and making, like adding to the discussion, because you just get this crazy, like overwhelming group that can't make decisions.
Mhm. And now they're asking, how can we resolve this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is just saying like, so what I kind of think of like in ancient Greece, it's like every single person would show up to every single like issue and cast a vote. It's like, how could you get every single person to show up and like vote on every issue nowadays?
Mm.
Um, which is like the whole representational democracy thing.
This was like what? But I didn't know what to highlight, but it was more, I didn't understand the Peter wrongs Paul,
Mhm.
but
That render, just saying that like large groups can't get involved in like other people's personal matters. Um,
so like,
so
no, I don't know. Go ahead.
to the spot to undertake. Oh, okay. So it's like not everyone would be able to even get involved. Like this is a small personal dispute. Like how would you even involve, like why would you involve all the citizens? Like it's out of the question that everyone would come here and like take a stance in this dispute, and then you'd have like everyone weighing into every dispute. Like that's just not feasible.
Sure. So then we could say the main idea with I don't want to say it's specific on democracy.
And that's kind of what it means when it talks about like the large groups of people.
Right. So you could say with democracy, it is harder to make decisions in a large group setting.
Mm-hmm. And we saw that large groups can't like, you know, achieve the goals that they need to, and it's really kind of just not feasible to get everyone together into one place for like every small issue. So thinking about, I don't know, if you were to infer with outside knowledge, which you don't need, would be like, oh, that's why we have like representatives and that kind of thing. But this is kind of what it's getting at, is you can't have direct democracy. I like this part at the end here. It is impossible for the collectivity to undertake the direct settlement of all controversies that may arise. So there's the idea that it's not feasible for every single thing, for every person to be involved.
Okay.
Okay. So, which of the following statements from the passage most strongly indicates that the passage was written prior to the 21st century? See what Jack Weston has to say.
Not a common type question. Huh?
Yeah, since the passage does not mention the 21st century, I just need to decide which choice is making a statement that people in our century would not for technical or cultural reasons. So, this is an example. This kind of question is definitely where Cars says, oh, you don't need any outside knowledge. But like,
JK.
JK, because how are you supposed to know? As Jack Weston points out, there's no mention of the 21st century. So you do have to have enough outside knowledge to know what would be 21st century versus what wouldn't be.
That's terrible, but okay.
Okay. So let's just look at the different choices here. So we've got the regular holding of deliberative assemblies of 1,000 members encounters the gravest difficulties in respect of room and distance. The crowd is readily influenced by the eloquence of popular orators. These same assemblies, if divided into small sections, would be much more guarded in their assent. I think we can immediately say C could be like whenever. That's basically just describing what we talked about with like groupthink. It doesn't matter kind of what time period you're in.
And
The
also,
sovereign masses
I
and
feel like
D.
I feel like it goes against the main idea, C. Because you're saying if it's divided, it'll be well, I don't know, because guarded in their sign is not necessarily saying they'll be better resolved or just better
Mhm.
thinking, perhaps.
Yeah, I think this is saying that a smaller group is less likely to like jump to the extreme conclusions because they feel like so it's mentioned I think up here much
Okay.
more guarded in their assent. It's like they're less willing to act, be very polarized and like jump to extreme conclusions because um, they're kind of a smaller group. So the bigger groups you have kind of less personal responsibility, you're more kind of dissociated into the group, and smaller groups you have a bit more responsibility, um, all kind of referencing groupthink and that kind of in group polarization. So I think C and D pretty much can be eliminated. And it looks like, well, you picked B and the right answer is A. So we can just focus between these two. This is with the context that this is like an outside knowledge question. Does A make sense?
It's, I mean, I would probably go with A with ruling out B, but
Mm-hmm.
would not be able to go to A exactly by itself. I don't know. I just don't well, what does this immediately stands out? Thousands upon thousands, the internet advances in communication.
I was also just thinking of like physically, we have big
The media.
arenas and places where people can gather. And, but
Oh,
yeah, the internet, I guess. I don't know, because I feel like,
yeah.
yeah, I guess it's really alluding to the internet here. I don't love this question because, like I mentioned, it's somewhat outside knowledge. But I think I would agree you can eliminate B just because like people that are good at talking can win over crowds. I think that holds true regardless of your time period, and it just kind of leaves you with A.
What about the eloquence of popular orators? Could you conclude that it's referencing the media?
Yeah, it could be referencing really any like public figure that's speaks well.
Okay. That's weird, but like weird
Yeah,
question, but okay.
I think process of elimination would be fair for that. Okay. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's maybe just not even understanding the question. Yeah. because it's kind of weird, like we want you to bring in outside knowledge, but it's all a lie. Okay. Okay. Which of the following assertions in the passage does the author support with a practical example? So I like this question because you can just look at the kind of quote that they give you and it gives you an exact thing in quotes, and then just read around it and see if there's a good example in the passage around it. Okay, let's just glance through these top ones. Looks like you pretty immediately eliminated A. Yeah, definitely doesn't talk about insurrection at all, besides that one quote. B, and therewith also disappears personality and sense of responsibility. When we can glance back up there, but again, that's fairly
Last
where is it?
paragraph 3, it's highlighted last sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really any examples, and you pretty much immediately change to a different idea right
Yep.
here. So fair to eliminate B. So now we're between C and D, which is where you were. The adhesion of the crowd is tumultuous, summary, and unconditional. See if we can find that.
I don't think there was
There we
any.
go.
Oh, JK. Okay, so I guess nothing. Well, I thought the crowd does not readily tolerate contradiction from small minority would be an example, but I guess we don't know what that contradiction would be in order for it to be an example.
Mm-hmm. Or I guess not to get like too picky about wording, when it says kind of like a practical example, like that would be more of an explained like this happened or that happened. Like I don't know, this still feels very like undescriptive of what it actually means. Like what is the tumultuousness? We don't
Okay.
really know that. And what is, and well, these are just kind of like, it's kind of just there. There's not really much information, I guess, surrounding it,
Mm-hmm.
um, about what it actually means.
Okay.
But we could, let's look at D, which is going to be the correct answer. It is impossible for the collectivity to undertake the direct settlement of all the controversies that may arise.
I was like, well,
So
controversy. Oh, well,
this one, it's a lot easier when you can do like Control F,
I
which you
know.
can't do on the actual test. That would have like saved my life so much time.
I know.
Um, but this one is like, because it does say practical example, I do like that it's like here's a example of a person and another person like actually doing something, and it's saying that like it's pretty much impossible for everyone to show up to figure out, what should we do about Peter and Paul kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Rating, most likely.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think it's, if you get like any questions, they don't always say practical example, but they'll say like with an example or like with evidence or something. You should be able to like point to the exact like quote that's supporting it. Um,
Great.
and it's usually going to be, in the same paragraph or right around, which is always, the hard part is just finding it in the paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we'll just go over these quickly. A newly independent nation about the form of government. Cool. Representative democracy, because the whole passage is literally arguing against a direct democracy. Um,
Oligarch
okay.
monarchy is opposite. That's just under one. And then again, oligarchy, we want, yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing is like a very like, oh, like very much here's why we need representational democracy without saying it. Okay. Consider that some groups are defined as cults. Members of these extremist sects generally live communally and obey an authoritarian, charismatic leader. All cults have fewer than 100 members. This would tend to weaken the passage's assertion. Okay. So something about all cults have fewer than 100 members, which you identified correctly as like the key piece of information in this question stem. So like this goes along with what the passage was saying, goes along with what the passage was saying. This is, I guess, fewer than 100, they're saying to mean kind of like a smaller group.
Yeah, but we
So
want
yeah,
that.
you totally got the point here. Yeah. This is saying that like a small group can still be irrational, even though this article said like, oh, a bigger group is going to be irrational. Cool. Exactly right there. Okay, last one. When using the term the sovereignty of the masses, the author seems to mean the ability of the masses to. So let's find that there. Of the masses. Okay. The most formidable argument against the sovereignty of the masses is derived from the mechanical and technical impossibility of its realization. The
I thought
sovereign masses.
it was more like leaning towards like massive people, so like the large group of people.
Mm-hmm.
That was my like thought process there.
Okay, let's look here. The ability. Okay, so we're asking basically what does it mean by the sovereignty of the masses?
Yeah. And then when I went through it, none of the answers like was able to make that like confirm the prediction. So I didn't know. I was like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what else it would be.
Yeah. So what I'm like, how I'm reading this as is like, we're, what are we arguing against? What is this whole passage arguing against? Kind of overall.
A large group democracy or direct democracy.
Yeah. So that's kind of exactly what I think it's trying to say here. That's what they mean by sovereignty of the masses. Like you can't have direct democracy, is what I'm getting from this part. So when it's saying like, why are we saying so? What do we mean by sovereignty of the masses? What we really mean is like, can the masses make every decision for themselves? No, that's what we're arguing against. We're arguing against this kind of direct democracy. So sovereignty of the masses, direct democracy, that whole
They're
idea,
synonymous.
which we're just defining as like the ability to make every single decision. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. In cases like this, when it's asking like what a term means, what I like to do is actually like substitute the answer choices back into the context. So we could say, like, the most formidable argument against voting in elections would be blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But the most formidable argument against making every decision is that it's like feasibly not possible. Oh, okay, that does make sense. So, like, almost substituting it back when it's asking me what a term is defined as or like if used as in the context of a passage.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, let's look now at passage 2, 7. This one looks better. 8,
Which one is this one?
9.
Oh, okay. I'm like, all right. This one's literature. Makes sense. I guess it's
Uh-huh.
also because I haven't. Oh, I should go back through that because I'm curious now of how these passages are, like which one these, like which ones as a like content based, because of how random Jack Western is. I based on my patterns, I definitely don't do well on political science, but I've
Hmm.
gotten better with literature.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a correlation at all, but it's just a thought that came about right now.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, you definitely like did pretty well in the first part. These are like pretty, we won't go too deep in these questions, but we'll just like, this is like asking how a statement functions. Pretty straightforward. Um, why do we include this example?
I love
Also
those
probably
questions.
pretty straightforward. Yep, I like those too. Okay, so this is another example, kind of like the last one I was talking about, is like the assertion that a poet is owned without opposition probably means that, like, almost substituting it back into the passage to be like, is this what they actually meant in this sentence? What
Mhm.
you got here? 9, implicit in the use of the phrase betrayal. Okay, yeah. So this is a inference and like what idea is kind of needed to make this whole phrase make sense.
I remember this. I like this passage. I remember this one. Where was, yeah,
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you did really solid. This was a lot of questions. One,
just
two, three,
don't,
4, 5, 6,
I,
7. 5 out of 7.
yeah, I think was this the first one that I did? Maybe. I don't know. They rarely go, hmm. There's usually one passage, maybe two that have 7 questions, right? In the real thing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it's definitely more rare.
it's a time killer basically though. So it's easier to knock that out ASAP and then worry about the 5, 6 questions later. So
Hmm.
I noticed that as well. If I can recognize that, like as I go through passages quickly to see, is this the 7 question? And just be like, just get it out of the way.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I always, when I ran into those longer passages, knew I could like, okay, I'll give myself like 12 to 13 minutes here and just know I have to like shave that off elsewhere.
Hmm.
Um, but just recognizing that like 7 questions is also good because it's like if you get that passage and really get it, then those 7 questions are going to be important towards like 7 questions is not insignificant for your what like number score you're going to get at the end. So
Especially since
I
cars
like
has,
that approach.
yeah, especially since cars has so much room for improvement. Like it's 2, 3 questions for a point. So it's worth it. It's like a passage, half of a passage, but that's already 2 passages right there that could move you up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like that strategy. I'm also a huge fan of jumping around on tests. It doesn't work for everyone, but if it works for you, definitely do that. Um, I think it just like whatever your brain like sometimes I just like I'll be halfway through something I'm like I need to just change and then I do something else and then I come back and whatever just works best. But I think that like spending that time, especially when you're like fresh into cars and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get this 7 passage out of the way. Like I think that's an effective use of time.
Yeah, I know. With chem and phys, it's like whatever. But if I'm not feeling it, like with acids and bases or orgo, I'm like, I'm gonna skip it and go back. And then with cars,
Hmm.
it's more of, am I gonna feel this or no? And I'm like, maybe. And then with bio, it's more of, can I knock out an organ systems passage ASAP versus like genetics? And then
Hmm.
psych and soc, I just go through it. And if I notice it's more of a psych-based passage versus a sociology, I'll do it. And then I usually save the sociology ones last.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty solid. I like I like that. And sometimes like well in the science sections, like some questions will kind of like give you hints for the other questions. And you're like,
Exactly.
glad
Yeah.
I did that. Okay. Um, let's see if we can just go through the 2 that you got wrong from this passage, hopefully fairly efficiently. Herbert Gorman's 1939 biography of the writer James Joyce was written with Joyce's cooperation and published in Joyce's lifetime. These facts would appear to challenge which of the following assertions made in the passage. So you definitely have to find a choice that aligns with an assertion, like something that they're definitely asserting in the passage, and then the fact that this challenges that.
Yeah, I was between A and B. I remember that.
Okay, so now to the right two. Okay. Writers prefer that readers concentrate on the writer's work rather than read a biography of the writer.
I feel like this was silly.
I guess it's like, yeah, if he's working on his own biography, does he like doesn't mind that people actually read his biography? Like he's clearly supporting the biography and not just his own work, if that
For
makes
sure.
sense.
Yeah. And I don't think writers really care about their reputation. It's just more of if you really want to know about me, read my book.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's also like, would this even challenge that? If writers fear their reputation, like, why would you, I don't know, contribute to your own, um, or I guess it's like, it makes sense if a writer feared their own reputation, they would contribute to their own biography to like make sure that it's all good. Um, so it wouldn't necessarily even challenge that idea. Does that make sense?
Well, a biography of the writer was written with cooperation and published. Writers prefer that readers concentrate on the writer's work rather than these facts would challenge. Oh, I think I did the opposite.
That would make sense because I can see where you would like how you could connect B, but B would be the opposite, or
Yeah.
B would not challenge, it would more support.
So it's more of how does the question stem challenge the passage,
Exactly.
not the answer choice questioning the question stem.
Hmm.
Got it.
How does Joyce helping to write his own biography challenge the passage?
For sure.
And it says it kind of down here, like Joyce's assistance in writing a biography could be like an attempt to control his reputation after death, which would mean that B is wrong because B is kind of supporting that idea rather than challenging that idea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's really more of let's see which one supports the passage but goes against the question stem,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny because normally we get the opposite.
Mm-hmm. That's also something that's like the challenge versus support is like always had to be so like focused in on that because I would read the question stem and then forget that it was like opposite or challenge and then come back and be like, oops.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, in general, from this passage, do you remember what the author was kind of implying about biographies of authors?
Avoid biographies.
Okay.
I guess A was more of I approach as faithfully as possible. No, that's not true. Read the Bible will definitely be not a replacement. I think what I didn't like was betray Wolf, but because I thought betray was
Mm,
too strong.
to do so. Yeah, that is a very strong wording. Or left of the process.
But I
I
guess
mean, it is
yeah,
the only one that like actually mentions, let's see. I guess we've got this quote here. Their punishment is likely to include betrayal biography, and the more famous you are, the more likely that betrayal. I agree that that's pretty strong language. I guess my reasoning would be that like there's no other choice that makes sense with because like the whole passage is about like biography is bad. There's no other choice that really would make sense going along with that besides D. But I can get where that language sounded a bit extreme. But we do have that whole bit about betrayal by biography. Okay.
I think AMC really points to the direction of which is the least wrong. Rather than Jack Western, it's more of this is
Right.
obvious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
I think that's kind of fair.
I hate that, but all right.
Yeah. They definitely want you to, I think, to use that process of elimination a good bit. So don't be afraid of that. Okay. The blah 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 blah. Okay. This was also kind of going along with that whole idea. Okay. Passage 3, we've got
Oh,
13,
French Revolution.
14, 15, 16, 17. This is a long one too. Oh, yeah, practice exam 1 has a lot of really randomly long passages.
I also thought isn't this the one about whether Lewis and the Queen were like, no, maybe. Is this the one where Louis and the Queen was like, screw port? No. I think I'm thinking of a different one. Because there was one where it was like John was in presence of the Queen because her position was crumbling. So then John had to go in and he was like fully against all these people. Is that this passage? Oh, it is this passage. Okay. Never.
Let's glance over this. Okay, so we're talking about the French Revolution, blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. Bottom of the social scale, we have this kind of discussion, blah, blah, blah. And then at the top, Queen Maria and her son John, all dependably protective of the church as the indispensable support. Okay, like that. Looked a small minority, students, Freemasons, scientists, who were irked by the despotism of the des, de, de,
Baptism.
despotism of the past. Okay, so these are people who are kind of free thinking and thinking a bit differently.
Yep.
We've got like our classical hierarchy and then our kind of free thinkers.
Anti-hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. Upon that timid monarchy.
So they were happy about the French Revolution, right?
Upon that timid minority, those shocked commoners, those startled dignitaries. Okay, this is saying that like everyone was either like really excited or terrified. Some people were like openly happy. This is
Yeah.
saying that like the Masons, those free thinkers were definitely happy, but definitely seems that some people were like terrified. It doesn't really give us an example of that. When Louis, blah, 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 blah.
This is what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So John was
So he's
saying,
cracking.
yeah, have all of these minorities arrested in
Mm-hmm.
prison. People were unhappy with Louis. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this last chunk was confusing because I was more
Mm-hmm.
of what does this have to do? Like, I understand that we're upset and they wanted to go to war, but then even like in textbooks, I was always confused about it. But it's more of who was against who. So I
Mm-hmm.
could, so it was more of I think Portugal and Spain wanted to go against France, who also were allies with the British.
So in 1793, so because the like rebels in France have executed the king, they're going to war against France,
Mhm.
and they're fighting with the British. So it's Britain, Portugal, and Spain against France, I think is what this is trying to say.
Oh, JK. Okay.
And then Spain negotiates a peace. Portugal asked, but French refused. Um,
See, that's okay.
and then And then this is saying that like there's still kind of tension until Napoleon. Um,
Came in and was like, we're gonna go against Britain, period.
yeah, this is probably like there might be a question on it, but yeah, this is
It
very much
was.
like
I remember
okay,
it.
we'll have to come to that. Yeah, they're definitely like trying to like how closely did you read this?
Like I got a
Okay.
good gist of it. And then it was that last part and then little specifics about, well, who was supporting who? Like what would happen if this happened and what how would France react or like some nonsense.
Mhm. Yeah, cool. Well, this makes sense. We said 1 and 3 were upholding the order. The Freemasons were the free thinkers. So C. Okay. Okay, here we go. It may be inferred from the passage that Portugal might have avoided the unfavorable attention Napoleon if it had. So we just said that Portugal asked for
Peace.
peace with France, but France refused because it said that Portugal was basically a colony and ally of England. So peace was refused because Portugal was still basically an ally of England. Let me write this down.
That's the part that confused me because even though it strictly said they're black and white, but it was more Portugal, Spain, and France were against British, but Portugal wanted peace, but France refused, even though they're on like the same side.
So it was one side was France and the other side was
Spain,
Spain.
Portugal, England.
Yeah. So I think it's basically saying like France did not forgive Britain and therefore did not forgive Spain or Portugal because they
Portugal.
still viewed Portugal as part of Britain. Okay. So Portugal might have avoided the unfavorable attention of Napoleon if it had
That makes sense.
A, refused to have commerce with Britain,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
expelled French aliens. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
These two definitely unrelated.
Nope.
Uh, I guess that makes sense of saying that like Napoleon didn't like Portugal because of their association with Britain. Okay. Yeah, definitely complicated. Also, like again, this is an example of a question. It's like you definitely have to know that Napoleon was French. Like that's kind of part of the setup to the question. Otherwise, it like you could maybe infer that, but it doesn't make a ton of sense. So, anyways,
This one was right. Was this one?
okay. Said that like the church was the linchpin of everything. Yeah, cool.
Gone against his own.
Which of the following facts cited in the passage gives the strongest support for the claim that Portuguese liberals were the minority politically? So we're looking for the strongest support.
That the liberals were the minority politically.
Mm-hmm. So you picked A, the queen and her son were opposed to them. I think that that's definitely true, but does that tell us anything that they're the minority?
No, they're
Because they could be the majority and still be opposed.
okay. I guess. I guess when I was thinking of minorities, I thought of the free thinkers because it said like that timid minority.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
Yeah.
trying to see what would fit more with that free thinkers. So like who are the like the scientists, businesses, the Freemasons,
Mm-hmm.
but that didn't help either.
Yeah. Well, I think that could make sense because remember up here it describes there's like the bottom and then there's the top and like here's your social order and then the free thinkers are kind of like separate from all that. It would make sense that like these people, the peasants, the craftspeople, the tradespeople, the soldiers, all at the bottom are like, you know, still in
The
that
minority.
conservative mindset, support this kind of line of thinking with the royalty. And then it would be like this small minority that we're talking about that are liberal are going to be, obviously different from the majority of the common people, which is what D is getting at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think like A was correct, but it didn't correct and mentioned in the passage, but it didn't provide support for what the question stem was asking, which is how do we know they were in the minority? Um, and they can be in the minority if the majority is, the commoners that are politically conservative. Okay. After the Napoleonic Wars, the Portuguese people demanded democratic reforms, including major restrictions on the powers of monarchs. Together with information in the passage, this fact most clearly indicates that. Okay, so you picked D, Freemasonry was coming into the social and political mainstream.
That's where I thought, okay, so the free thinkers are aligning now with these other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, so it says, like, here's even the Jack Weston, like, it's a tempting wrong answer, since the passage mentions that Freemasons sought democratic reform. But basically, it's just saying that just because they supported democratic, like, does this actually tell us that it's the Freemasons that caused these democratic reforms or Freemason thinking that led to these changes? We don't really know. We just know that something is like correlated with like monarchs losing power. And so this is justifying, like, oh, it was probably fair for him to be like scared because there are ideas about monarchical power. Because it wasn't just the Freemasons who had that thought, it was lots of different people, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I got to go even more broad.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know that it's there. You know that there are these people that do like are against that monarchical power, but it's unknown of who. And just being
Mm-hmm.
aware it is present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, I guess this is wanting you not to make any extra jumps. Um, because we don't know that, like, just because there's restricting power on monarchs, we don't know that that means Freemasonry is popular. Like, that's another kind of jump right there, whereas A is much less of a jump.
Gotcha.
Okay. Which of the following facts most strongly, again, looking at that strongly, supports the author's image of John as resistant to social change?
This was tricky.
Uh,
I remember this one. I couldn't help but laugh at A.
yeah,
It's like,
completely
I'm out.
unrelated.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. What is this? Was resistant to social change. Yeah, D is not really super relevant.
Yeah, again, it was
Okay.
C. I didn't know if like
Okay.
revoking would be good
I think
because
that would kind of go along with it, right? If he like makes changes and then like undoes them, like he's very much resistant to those changes.
yeah, when you would say resistant to social change, I thought he wouldn't even attempt to change. That's why I was reluctant on B because it's saying that you're already like he said yes and then he's like, wait, JK. But then but also C doesn't even align with it at all. It's just again the social change of if it already happened versus is he wanting to avoid it completely. But
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I think that might be largely semantic, where it's almost just like he's resistant to change because he's undoing the change. Rather like resistant versus, I don't know, opposing versus, whatever other word. But I think B is really the only idea that would fit. Okay. Last one. They're really on this whole like very last section of this
I
paragraph.
know. That's why I was like, I knew everything up until the execution.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely just the weird passage. Okay.
Okay,
The
this one
authors
was
imply okay. The authors imply that the Portuguese ambassador applauded the French National Assembly because of genuine sympathy for their ideals. Alternatively, the ambassador's action could be explained as indicating that. So let's see what Jack Weston says. This is a very rare question type. It is asking me to extrapolate an alternative explanation for an event in the passage. There is not really a way to predict what the right answer to this question might be beyond knowing that whatever the answer choice is has to explain blah, blah, blah. So I should be prepared to eliminate my way to the right answer. Yeah, again, this is just kind of like inferencing into um, the right answer. Yeah, it's almost like you can't actually know what they're getting at until you read the question choices. So we're looking at an alternative explanation. And four.
uh,
Here's what
yeah,
I mentioned. The Portuguese ambassador in Paris, who may have read Rousseau or heard Mirabeau, applauded the French National Assembly.
that's it. I'm like, how do you change an event based on that?
Yeah, this is not the greatest of passages. The Portuguese ambassador in Paris. So I guess it's saying that like he may have been influenced by reading Rousseau or hearing Mirabeau. So this is saying that they're implied because he is like sympathetic to their ideas. He's now supporting them.
Yes.
What could be the alternative? If he's not sympathetic, why is he still supporting them? I guess this is just like logic. Why would you support someone if you don't agree with their idea? Um, D doesn't make sense because you're not going to agree and go against your country if you have no strong political commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, like I feel like, damn,
I didn't like this one.
yeah, I guess I can see where they get A, but I don't like this question at all. I think it's kind of fair that you like struggled with it. I guess it's saying B and C all kind of align with what this question stem implies. They align with the question stem. If you have sympathy for their ideas, you'd go against someone else's ideas and you'd like gain that sympathy by being there. This would
Oh,
be the only one that's kind of opposing the question stem. So this is odd in that it gives us information in the question stem, and these choices are actually trying to um, alternatively explain the question stem rather than explain the passage. So I don't love this question for that because it's very asking about itself and not quite going along with anything we knew from the passage. So I wouldn't be too upset that you didn't get that right. Um, I think that some of the later exams don't have questions as like weird as this. There's always going to be something, but this one's just kind of weird.
they love it.
Okay. Now we've got passage 4. We're out here to do photography.
Either way.
Okay. Okay. So it seems like there were also some struggles with this one, so we can go through that. Yeah, 20. Okay. Photography. This is one of those ones that get like philosophical.
Photography shows the good and bad of society, but hard to distinguish between reality and versus images. That was my main idea.
Uh-huh. Yeah. There's nothing that should not be seen, nothing that should not be recorded. cameras implement the instrumental view of reality by condensing information. Mm-hmm. Picture taking is both aesthetic and instrumental. Okay. Capitalist society requires a culture that is based on images.
I guess I should have highlighted that. I don't know. Can you? Oh, maybe not.
I don't know if it still lets me. No, it doesn't. So okay, cameras can both subjectify and objectify reality. The production of images reflects the prevailing ideology of a society. Okay, very much theoretical. The logic of consumption provides the ultimate reason for photographing everything. To consume means to burn up, to use up. Move on to the natural world. A distinction between images and real objects, between copies and originals, is less and less plausible. Okay, so we've got a couple different ideas here. They kind of talk about this in the first question, which is talking about this aesthetic versus instrumental approach, which both kind of have, which photography has uses for, which is very much like what's, you know, this is, you can capture private perception, kind of capture this aesthetic, but it's also like an instrument that governments can use and the state can use, which is what I was talking about here. The author's main purpose in exploring these two approaches is to suggest a new form of conservation must develop a coherent ideology to facilitate the task. No, C, solve the problem of the continual proliferation of images. Okay, did this one make sense?
I think I did the process of elimination. This.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this whole thing is very much, it's basically, why are we asking about aesthetic versus instrumental approaches?
New ways of, different ways of doing, or yeah, well, doing photography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're talking about conservation, and we can connect conservation to these like proliferated images. So we kind of mentioned those, that to bring those two ideas together. Okay. 21. The author's analysis of image making rests on the assumption that a capitalist society separates blank and blank. Okay, where do we get image making?
I don't know if it specifically said image making.
Mm-hmm. Paragraph 3. Probably not. Cameras capture and fix impressions. Blah, 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 blah. Cameras. Okay, let's just read the choices. Image making rests on the assumption that a capitalist society separates advertising and entertainment.
Okay.
Okay. Because I guess it was really just pointing out exactly paragraph 3, which you would have just had to come to from rereading. But when we think about image making, we talk about like the dual purpose. It makes sense. Like each purpose is kind of separate from each other. That was much easier when I looked and said what passage, which paragraph you were supposed to look at.
Yeah. And I even said like you said, the government versus people.
Mm-hmm. yeah, these kind of like two separate purposes of photography, and one is much more aesthetic and private, and one is much more public and kind of useful.
Yeah, that was the line. That's what I thought from advertising and entertainment. But I mean, private perception is more spot on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
22.
Which of the following best exemplifies the author's assertion that, according to the instrumental approach, cameras can be used to present information that facilitates timely, accurate responses? So we're looking for an example of the instrumental approach,
I
showing
understand this now.
timely, accurate responses.
I don't know what you said that like the last two sentences of paragraph 3 where it was like cameras fix upon the privacy and then also that the government uses it in order to catch illegal actions. And I don't know, after you saying that, that like literally explained the past two questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was more of an example. Well, that's not true. That is an example of instrumental approach,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I guess that connection was misconnected.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess it's like exactly getting at like by aesthetic approach, I'm thinking like literally just thinking about the definitions. Like aesthetic, I'm literally thinking like pretty,
Pretty, yeah.
art. Instrumental, I'm thinking like useful. It's a tool. Um, and we it at least mentioned very briefly like power of what does it say? State, industry, and science.
Yes.
So if we're looking at like what's a way that cameras are used as a tool, best fit is to get
Catch people. Def
traffic offenders. Okay. Which of the following passage assertions most strongly suggest that the author is critical of capitalist society?
What did he mention about capitalist society again?
Let's see what I don't know if it mentions it in the. There
Sorry.
we
They
go.
found chicken. Or
We've
go ahead.
got a capitalist society is a culture based on images. It needs to stimulate buying, blah, 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 blah. Cameras serve the needs of a capitalist society. Cameras define reality in the two ways essential to the workings of a capitalist society: as a spectacle to absorb the attention of the citizenry and as an object of scrutiny. The logic of consumption provides the ultimate reason for photographing everything in a modern capitalist society. To consume means to burn, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I guess that's what we got.
But
Most strongly.
how is that related to A?
Well, let's look at their choices here. So I guess we have to think about which would be something that is critical of capitalist society. Freedom to consume is equated with freedom itself. On its face, A does not seem critical of capitalist society, but in context of the passage, the author clearly thinks that this equation is a problem. The freedom to consume, according to the author in paragraphs 4 and 5, is to blame for the proliferation of images that the author thinks is a problem. So the freedom to consume, mistaken as political freedom, is one reason to dislike capitalist society. A is therefore a good answer to choose. I'd say that's a stretch. I mean, it does talk about consumption. This is what we were talking about. The logic of consumption provides the ultimate reason to photograph everything. And then I guess we see here like consuming means to burn, to use up, to require replacement. And consumers are kind of rapidly doing that. But because they're rapidly consuming, they're depleting the real world, making it appear drab and obsolete by comparison. So I guess that's where the connection's coming in. It's saying that like overconsumption of capitalism is really hurting, you know, our perception of the real world and real images. Um, and so because capitalism is linked to this like freedom of consumption, it's not good, which is a stretch. We can also look for, I guess, process of elimination type things. Um,
See, that's where it was
I,
more of saying like those images may not be good. That's why I thought it would be problematic. Oh wait, I didn't choose that. JK. But like B and C are similar to each other. That's why I
mhm.
thought it was more between B and C versus A. Because I did not understand. I still don't. But
I
like
think
with
A
A,
is like a little way too out there.
okay, cool.
Um, yeah, I'm like, I feel like in general, this is a bit of a stretch. Like this would definitely be considered a hard question. Let's see what they're saying. Yeah, because it's like this part that is really the jump because I can understand why they would be critical of like overconsumption, but it's also saying that like freedom is much more than just consumption, which is never mentioned or kind of brought into the paragraph at all. So I think if A was worded differently and if it was that like the author dislikes capitalist society because of overconsumption, I would agree with A. It's just because it connects in this like equated with freedom itself, it's a bit over complex and a bit of a stretch for me. But does it make sense, I guess, like where they got that from?
Not really.
Uh, no worries. Let's see, it's up here. We have the logic of consumption is why we're photographing everything. And the author has an issue with too many photographs. Let's see. Images are manufactured, blah, 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 blah. Cameras are both the antidote and the disease. Photographic images add to the natural world. The manufactured images that help to bolster a depleted sense of reality. So, too many photos, too much overconsumption is depleting the real world, and capitalism is overconsumption.
So because of A leading to B and B leading to C, X is
Yeah,
also marking.
basically.
Okay.
So, I I would take issue with the wording here, but yeah, that's what they're getting at here.
Okay.
And then I guess the only reason I would say it's not C is that like that's not necessarily saying anything against capitalism. Social change is expressed by a change in images.
Okay.
And B, yeah, it's just hard. Like B and C aren't necessarily against capitalism, but also like A is like against capitalism, but seemingly unrelated. So uh, this might just be an accept that
Gotcha.
this is a bad question. Yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
feel like whenever you do cars, there's always going to be questions like, I don't get this. This doesn't make sense. I'm going to accept that I won't understand what they're trying to get at here. Because sometimes the AAMC logic is bad.
Agreed.
Okay. Suppose an artist created an exhibition consisting entirely of tastefully arranged collages of mug shots and fingerprints. Any photograph, regardless of intention, may be viewed as art. Sure.
It seems like I'm getting questions right on the aspects that I understand, but where
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand, that's a train wreck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like the best. Are you able, when you're doing the passages, to recognize that you don't understand it?
Yes.
Okay. Because that could be where it might be useful, like on the first couple of AMC practices that you do, untimed, like uninhibited, going back and just reading and really like trying to work at that until you understand what they're saying,
Okay.
which it might not happen. It might have to be something that we go over together, but really just trying to like, okay, I set my timer for 10 minutes, I got through, but I know that like these three questions, like, I just do not understand it. I don't know what they're getting at here. Let me sit down and like really try to read what they're talking about, maybe take some notes, jot something down, like just try to get a better idea of what they're talking about, and then see like, do I understand the questions now?
Okay.
And then hopefully that will just kind of come while reading the passage. There's definitely like with cars, there'll be like times where you just have to like reread something and just like try to understand what it's saying.
Yeah.
So it's just like being able to kind of work that muscle and make that a more efficient process is going to be
It even
helpful.
sucks even that even if you say it out loud and you hear yourself, and it's like, oh, that makes sense, but you can't do that in real
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well, you can do that while you're practicing still. I find that reading things out loud helps me a lot. Um, I would also kind of like not whisper, but like mouth the words to
Yeah.
myself because I think that's helpful too, like that actual action of making the words.
That actually, I started doing that. Like when I was first going through cars, it helped me. And then now I just do it to myself on Jack Weston. So honestly, going back to that tactic is actually not
Hmm.
a bad idea.
Yeah. I think it just is helpful in like processing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ugh, stop it.
Based on passage information, one can infer that implementing the author's program for conservation would most likely include suggestions for. So we have to think about the author's program for conservation.
It's losing the originality, right? Oh, JK. Well,
Let's see.
do it all. I'm so sorry.
No, it's cute.
Bruh, you need to chill. Give me that. You're done. You're done with the chicken.
Mhm.
You're done with the chicken. So that's why I thought that provide ecological balance between the real world and the recreated one. I
Mhm.
thought it was more of not him and well, him being the narrator, but or the author is more of we have originality and then we have images. So maybe the images would disrupt the real meaning of these pictures of like the real life. So that was what I thought was what the form of conservation was more what he was going through. But
Mhm. They definitely kind of mention that up here. I think when they talk about it down in these last few bits, they're talking about like what is it saying? Like they're depleting the sense of reality. I guess that's sort of what you're getting at. Um, that's what I'm looking at here. Here, kind of what you highlighted: a distinction between images and real objects is less and less plausible. So it's hard to tell what's real versus what's a captured image.
yes.
Um, and so I don't know. I guess in conservation, it's talking about like we've got to conserve manufactured images as well as natural resources. So like that language is making me think like conserving natural resources generally means like using them less or like replenishing them. Um, so
Uh,
like I don't know.
so more on
I
the okay.
Yeah, because of this whole mention of the natural resources, I'm thinking of conservation as like the
Eco-friendly.
typical, yeah, kind of conservation that we think of. So
Okay.
let's just look. Let's see.
So here we're
Limiting
so
the use.
specific, but then also okay. Sorry, continue.
No, we're good. So this is just saying that like we have because this whole point of this paragraph is basically we have too many photos,
Yes.
the increasing supply. So how would you fix too many photos? You would have less photos. I think is kind of the next line of logic, which would be then
Less photos.
B,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
like a really weird argument to make, but I guess that's what the author's about. So
What the heck did I think with A? Limiting the use of computer images. Okay, I don't know why. Don't ask. I don't know. it made sense in the moment, but I don't think that it, it I feel like that's the complete opposite of the eco-friendly conservation program. Oh, you found the chicken. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, and maybe you were thinking of like something about distinguishing reality versus images. Like I feel like it could kind of fit into that,
Oh, right.
but yeah, I guess in the most simple sense of what they mean by conservation, because they're talking about too many images and then like conserving resources. I'm just kind of sticking with conservation in the classical sense of like using less.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So this is also ringer branching. This says
Yeah.
more.
I guess I can see where it came from though. That's definitely a weird, but it was really just figuring out what do they mean by conservation. And I think the clue was the thing that we were talking about with the natural resources.
Eco-friendly and more based on reality imaging. See, those like at least for Jack Weston, they want you to connect it to the main idea, but this one is really more of this is what we're trying to look for based on these details, and then sometimes it connects to the whole passage.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because also when it will connect you to like, so like when it says final paragraph, it's letting you like know, like obviously it's still going to be connected to the paragraph as a whole, but it's really like you based on evidence from this paragraph, like you can narrow yourself a bit when it directs you to a particular paragraph. 26. Okay, let's think the last one for this guy.
I feel bad
Okay,
for I'm trying to mute myself when he's going crazy so you don't have to hear.
it's okay. I know, and it's like I have a dog and a cat, so yeah. Recent technological developments like high resolution satellite imagery and diagnostic PET scans have refined and extended the camera's capacity to provide information. So immediately I'm thinking of like the instrumental approach. Which of the passage assertions does this information support most strongly? So I immediately see A is very much more the aesthetic approach. B, kind of unrelated to cameras being like a useful tool. C, cameras are means of appropriating reality and making it obsolete. I feel like that's kind of almost directly opposite to illuminating reality, like a PET scan or something, or what is this thing? Satellite imagery. Like those are very much illuminating reality. Or photography can be used to both control and benefit society.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think this was very much leaning into the first half of the paragraph where we're talking about this aesthetic versus obsolete or aesthetic versus instrumental kind of idea. Um,
Again,
and
yeah. Again, I was thinking about like connecting to the main idea versus like that one little detail.
mhm. Where the question stem stands out. Yeah, I guess it would just be like C relates to the passage, but like doesn't relate to the question stem. So it's twofold of like, I like that you're considering the main idea, but you like it needs to connect. So you got the like connects to the passage part, but you also need the connects to the question stem part. Um, and there's
Oh,
also this idea that like there can be multiple main ideas. And like a lot of times with cars, because they're like kind of past like excerpts from something, you'll kind of have like a top main half main idea, kind of like a bottom half main idea that are like related, obviously, but not necessarily like hey, this kind of top half is explaining this part, this bottom half is explaining this part, and one's maybe a little bit more relevant to a certain question than another.
sure. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Then we have passage 5. Look at that. Yay. 8, 29, 30, 31. Okay. 27.
Okay.
Okay.
Thought I understood this passage too.
Okay. Improving education. Mm-hmm. Reducing the number of pupils per teacher. What's the problem? It costs a lot. Okay, that makes sense. So this passage, I like this paragraph, or this highlight is really just, does class size reduction actually improve student achievement? That's the thesis for this whole rating.
Yep.
Class sizes have fallen substantially at all grade levels, but there has been no significant improvement in academic achievement. But it's hard to like isolate that as the only factor that's changed. Most evidence has found that smaller classes can benefit students, at least in the early grades, but only under certain conditions. So small classes can improve achievement, but only under certain conditions. So I definitely want to like keep this in mind. Like, what are the caveats here? That's going to definitely come up as a question. A conventional wisdom about small classes is that they minimize disruptions, blah, 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 blah. Studies have found that educators rarely change their instructional styles to match class size. Educators generally devote the same overall time to individual instruction in small and large classes. With fewer kids, the child gets a bigger share of that time, but the increase is not nearly enough to count for differences. Okay, this is just explaining how teachers approach small classes. So if it's not these factors, then why could small classes be better? Substantial performance gains from small classes occur in the early elementary grades. Again, going back to that. So then it's like, what's the cost benefit of raising salaries versus or having to pay more teachers versus to have small class sizes? Cool. I think it does. I think this is. I remember this passage. The reading itself is fairly straightforward.
Questions, however.
Cool. Perfect. What's the main idea? A, and you can literally just like write A down. Here's your main idea from the paragraph. We can keep coming back to that. Under some conditions, but we don't know if it's the most effective way or not. Okay. The assertion that reducing class sizes requires more teacher plays which of the following roles in the paragraph? So we said that obviously if you want a smaller class size, you need more teachers, more classrooms, equipment, these expenses, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's going to be expensive basically. So we want to know, like, is it worth the cost to hire more teachers to reduce class sizes? Okay. Plays which of the following roles in these passages? It establishes that smaller classes are the most expensive way to improve education. Obviously, this is the like most expensive. There's no support for that. We definitely got to get rid of that. Okay. Provides an explanation for the substantial costs of class size reductions. That can make sense. Like, this is why it's so expensive, and it's because we've got to hire so many more teachers and all this equipment and such. C is kind of the inverse of B, where it's a conclusion supported by the observation. But that wouldn't make sense. It would kind of like more teachers are expensive. So that's why class size reductions are expensive. It switches the logic there. And then D, it establishes the need for more controlled studies on the cost effectiveness of smaller classes.
This is more for
okay. I like D. I like what you were getting at. Even though it's wrong. It's basically just asking, like, why do we mention that class sizes are more expensive or hiring more teachers? So we could still make the argument of D just by saying smaller classes are more expensive, right? And that's why we need to like make these studies. But I guess specifically, why do we mention that these class sizes require more teachers? And that's the justification for why they're actually so expensive. If that almost makes sense. So it's like a line of logic, and you're like just a step too late. So more teachers means it's more expensive. More expensive means you need to do more studies to see if it's actually useful. So you could just kind of skip a step and that logic leap there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of the same thing with paragraph 4.
Mm-hmm. The observation that some teachers use techniques that work best in small classes is used to support which of the following assertions. So yes, we can look at the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Small classes, better for one-on-one. It's good for elementary.
Some teachers who already use methods well suited to smaller classes do very well when they're actually given smaller classes and their improved performance pulls up the average. So I guess this is explaining like maybe it just seems like it's better because some teachers are using a better style of learning already. And then when you switch over, like we just see the benefits of that. That's kind of what I'm getting from here. So let's see. Some teachers use techniques. Well, okay. Substantial performance gains from small classes occur in the early elementary grades and do not accumulate beyond first or second grade. I think that's not really going along with it because I think it does say that they can accumulate, and that's kind of explaining these changes.
Yeah.
Okay. Educators rarely change their instructional styles to match the size of their classes. I think that's true, and it fits with this observation. Like some teachers use good techniques for small classes. And it's just like when they have small classes, it works, but they're not going to change it if they have bigger classes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that necessarily supports that like teachers don't change their style of teaching. Like it's not necessarily why we care about the teachers that use these techniques, if that makes sense. And we saw that C is like they don't really change their styles. So let's read D. When class sizes are reduced, the improved performance of teachers who already use methods well suited to small classes pulls up the average achievement level. I like D just because it's literally like the next sentence after, let's see, after where we identified that this was in the passage.
Mm-hmm.
So we're including that some teachers use methods that work well with small groups. And so when they do get small groups, they are doing really well and pulling up averages. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, assume that in a particular state, teachers at all grade levels emphasize hands-on projects and personal interactions with individual students. The passage suggests that in this state, class size reductions would probably. So,
I hate this.
let's see. I think it mentions something about hands-on in the
Yeah.
paragraph.
Shorts. Yeah. Kindergarten, first graders.
Kindergarten and first grade teachers tend to use educational techniques that work best in small classes, such as emphasizing hands-on projects and personal interactions. So these techniques work best in small classes. So if a state uses techniques that work best in small classes and then reduce class sizes, what do you think would happen?
I was different. Like it was hard between B and D because they were saying all grade levels on the question stems, but it was going against the passage because it was saying early elementary, so kindergarten, first grade. And so I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. So let me, I guess, explain out this logic. So it's saying that the way kindergarten and first grade teachers teach is hands-on and like based on projects and personal interactions. So when you do switch to a smaller class size, these kindergarten and first grade teachers have good results. They see student improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So this is saying, what if all the teachers, regardless of year, used this style, and then we switched to smaller class sizes? What would happen? So I think what it's trying to get you to assume is that it's actually this hands-on project personal approach that's responsible for the improvement. So because these kindergarten and first grade teachers are using the techniques that work best in small classes, that's why we're only seeing the improvement in kindergartners and first graders.
Because it's only
However, yeah, if an eighth grader used this technique that worked better in a small class, we could see potentially improvement in that eighth grader kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It's more of a soc question here. Okay. Focus more on the technique.
I would ultimately choose D over B. Having to choose between them makes me scrutinize the passage even more closely.
Bruh. Not
Okay.
impossible. Nothing's okay. I hate that. Be like, it's not directly saying that nothing's impossible. Well, clearly, unless it straight up says it's impossible.
Yeah. I think what they want you to understand is that they're just implying that the reason why kindergartners and first graders improve is because of these
They
techniques.
have,
So if you use these techniques in a different grade, it carries on. That's definitely a trickier one. Because like you said, B definitely fits right with a paragraph saying, so I could see why you default to B over D.
so I think that's the difference then. Jack Weston is more on a holistic view, while AAMC also is okay with specifics. Like if it's directing you to a specific area, it wants you to be specific, but still underlining the background of the passage.
Exactly. Because there will be points when I will say like paragraph 4, and you have to remember like the context that came before that, obviously, to understand it. But yes, I think that that's fair. Is that there's going to be some more specific, more like you can read more narrowly
Okay.
in answering these questions.
I think
So I
that's
wouldn't.
really smart. That's smart then, because then it's easier to narrow versus go narrow and broad. Because everyone is
Yes,
going to start narrow and it's going to be hard to work out the broad. But once you figure out the broad, you can easily pick out the specifics.
exactly. And like there's still a lot of broad questions as well.
Yeah.
So you obviously need to have that skill set. But yeah, I think that that mindset would be helpful so that it's not necessarily like, oh, well, I don't think this answer choice might be correct because like other parts of the passage, like you're able to kind of look at the part that you're focusing on. It's a bit of, I guess the learning curve between the two just comes in like learning when to be more narrow versus to be more broad. And it's really just kind of reading options and doing passages and just reading the explanations that they have too, or making your own explanations but making it make sense.
Wow. I hate that. Like we're learning to be specific in like how we read, and then we have to go broad and then back and forth. That's okay. It's fine. The learning curve.
Yeah, it'll click hopefully with some more AAMC passages,
Yeah.
because once you do kind of understand that and get that, then it'll still be a useful like exercise to do Jack Weston.
Oh, absolutely. I still think that, I mean, you have to know the main idea in order to know which one's going to back up
Mm-hmm.
base. I mean, you can be, yeah. I mean, you can answer the question without even supporting the passage, like without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which of the following findings would most weaken the author's explanation of the observed effects of class size reductions? So we're trying to weaken the argument that they
And
have.
this is fulfilling A, like you said, with hand and personal interaction, but it won't matter because it's just gonna, yeah, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that that's, yeah, I guess makes the most sense in the context of this, because that was kind of the implication that they were having, was just like, oh, it's class size reductions are effective because of these like group of teachers that use these more effective techniques. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, I'm just going to do this one. There we go. 36, 37, and 38. Okay, pretty solid.
I'll take it.
This is humanities philosophy.
What are the hardest ones? And I got one wrong. Or two.
Okay, 2 out of, is this another 7 one? Oops.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Dang. They just
Rude.
have a bunch of short ones at the end. Like, what the heck? Okay. Okay. This can be our last one.
Okay.
The cities of Cosmopolis, the world city. Oh, this is the professor's one. Professors belong to books.
Mm.
Most professors get their jobs through national searches. Although many have geographical preferences, most are living wherever they can find work. Majority of college students attend institutions in their home states, so they're being taught a cosmopolitan class of transient exotics, aka people from different places.
Yeah.
Okay. Rootless professors could be a problem though, because they're ignorant of the values of connectedness to a place. Okay. This ignorance gives preference to the voice of the abstract at the voice of the particular. So these professors, I guess, are more focused on big ideas rather than the place in the world that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this can only be done. Uh-huh. Interesting. Academia has to overcome its prejudice against the local and the provincial. Oh, and we have this example of someone was told that they were too much of a native to become a permanent faculty member. Professors should include local content. This is the substance of a rooted education. Ought to work in acquiring a dual citizenship. They need to live where they work and work where they live and really take root in a place. This idea is basically like professors are too disconnected. They need to be more connected to the place that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like the passage. Okay. Which of the following underlying assumptions about professors is implied by the passage argument? So we have that most of these professors are living where they can find work, right? Rootless, less connected.
Oh, I don't know why I picked A. C is definitely more aligned with it. Okay, I don't know why I didn't choose that.
I'm not sure. It looks, it's hard to tell because Jack Weston kind of messes it up, but it looks like you crossed off A. Because
Oh,
this part's crossed off. But I don't know. But A was the one that you picked. Hard
I
to tell with
understand why
the,
C though. I understand C more. I don't know why I would have gone with A.
yeah, maybe just misreading or something, but C makes sense. Okay. Okay, let's go through these guys. Which of the following subject areas would be most useful for economics professors to know?
Oh, this
Um,
stupid thing. Like, I hate it when they do that.
yeah, this is ecology because it wants you to be connected to a place. So, like, the study of an environment is ecology,
Oh, I
which,
never answered this question. I guess I skipped it and never went back to it. Oh, that's a oops.
oh, isn't this, it says that this is
Wait.
the one that you,
Oh, JK, never mind.
so you got it
Oh,
right.
never mind. I still hate these kinds of questions, but
I agree because it's like such a stretch of like ecology because you care about the place.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. 34. Which of the following points is supported by a concrete example? This is again a search and find. Hiring committees are prejudiced. There's the whole example about the guy who's too native. That's a perfect, this is the example done. Cool. 35. The author would most likely pay for a college course that applied classroom concepts to a community garden project. It's the only one that really relates to connecting to the community and like taking roots. Okay. 36. Based on information in the passage, which of the following would be the most likely reason behind the author's suggested academic reforms? Which of the following would be the most likely reason behind the author's suggested academic reforms? So I guess their suggested reforms are including local content and having academia hire more local people. So why do we want to include more local content and more local people? To replace a cosmopolitan university education with one that emphasizes the local. Okay, I can see why you picked this. This is a pretty compelling answer choice since it mentions a shift to a more local friendly approach. The word replace, though, gives me pause because that's a pretty drastic claim to make. The passage, paragraph 6 states that the author wants students to be exposed to both the world of ideals and scholarship, but also the real world.
Uh,
So I guess that it's just like on the more extreme side. However, I think that like it made a lot of sense. It's just recognizing the more extreme side. Um, and then I guess A is the more like piece, like less
seeing
crazy
that
answer.
it's I think keyword is relationship versus replace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a wording one. Okay, 37. Passage discussion of local content assumes which of the following? Okay, yep, this is just pulling a quote that you've got.
It literally supports the previous question, which is ironic.
Yeah, which one weakens the author's argument? This is pretty easy. Most teach in a city where they prefer to live. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Let's look at, I just want to glance through the rest of these.
Okay.
Okay, passage 8 went well, and passage 9 went pretty well. Okay, yeah, the end of this was really solid. Do you remember where you like hit the time limit or wherever?
I swear I have it written down. I was looking at it earlier. Let me. Yes, was 20 minutes. This is page 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I was in the middle. JK, that's not right. I was in the middle of passage 3 and passage 6 was the last one.
Okay. Passage 3. Okay.
So that one was one of the more butchered ones. 3.
Hmm.
Then passage
Well,
6.
I'm gonna just change these to ran out of time if that's okay.
Yeah, go.
Um, just to highlight where you were before. Um, because what I do like is that the last two paragraphs that you did were really solid, and those are like in the time limit.
Yes. But then one of the ones that I did really well, I also ran out of time.
Yeah. Well, at least it balances out. Okay, let's see. I was just glancing through 949. I'm just marking the correct ones down here so we can just get a visual. Because these are all really solid. So like if, because it seems like towards these paragraphs, maybe because these are like the less long ones. These are
Yeah,
all the like 4 question ones, like the much nicer ones. 50, 49.
you got those already. 35, 44 wrong, 43, 42 wrong, 41.
41.
Okay.
And that's
Um,
where we left
yeah.
off. Okay, so there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more incorrect questions in the rest of the passage. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that like we can mark, oh, you marked these, that's good. This one was definitely a little bit of a struggle. It was 3. It was honestly just this middle section. Like the beginning was pretty solid, and
That's
then the end was really
literally
solid.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was referring to earlier was more of there were 3 that I was like, okay. And then there was a chunk where I was like, what the heck? And then the rest were like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely like seems like that. I feel like it's not how long were these? Like it's not terrible to go and like, you know, jump around and, if you want to tackle the 7 questions first or if you want to wait, take the 7 questions later. Um, it doesn't take a ton of time if it helps you. You can like go through all the questions really fast and just write down like passage 1, 5, passage 2, 7. Like you can do that at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But that's really just up to you if you think that's a significant like way to get you in the right mindset.
I mean, passages 2, 3, and 4 are all 7 questions. And 6,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Because like
equal.
these ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because
I don't recall them having that
it's like
many.
these are 5 questions. So like 1 is 5, 5 is 5, 7 is 5, 8 is 5,
9
and
is 5.
9 is 5.
There's
So it's
no,
like if it's just 5 and 7, there's like hardly any 6. So that's really where it all. I'll like glance through one of the other ones, but I think that that might just be, I can't remember if it's just this practice exam that has some of the longer ones or if it's like any of the other.
I don't know, but I don't know. I just feel like that's really rare to have more than 2 sevens.
Yeah, let me look through this guy. Cars. Oh, Yeah, there's not like there's not any like that in the next practice test.
Maybe I would do better on that. Now I'm curious, how much was it on the unscored? How many sevens?
There's
One,
the last two on the next one are 7, but that's the rest. There's like a 4, there's a 5, the rest are pretty solid.
7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 5. And also, I think most of them were back to back, which was crucial or like rude.
Yes, another reason to not do things in order.
Yeah, so the unscored, the first one, there were 2 7 passages.
Okay, that's what the next exam has as well. So I think that's more of the typical. So what was this one? Like this one's like 4 7s,
Yeah.
which is a lot. Okay,
So that's
so
also
that means hopefully that was the worst of the 7 passage
I
questions.
always remember exam 1 was always the the dagger and the sword or whatever the
Mhm.
terminology is.
Mhm.
But yeah, cool.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that you can honestly just like, um, approach the test how you want. Like, I don't know if you want to do like one paragraph or one passage to start off that you know is going to be a bit easier, and then you like knock out your 7s, and then you finish up again with the little easier ones. Like, as long as you're not taking too much time, like deciding what order you're going to go in, I think it's often more helpful to go in an order that's helpful to you.
Yep.
But
That's
obviously, you
what
don't
I
want
do.
to waste like precious car's time, you know.
I try to minimize the plan as much as possible for cars at least
Mhm.
because it's really going to be a game
Yeah.
time decision.
Sometimes I will see just like, oh, this is going to be a philosophy one. Like, I'll come back to this,
Mhm.
and then like, just that on the moment decision.
Yeah.
It's okay. Cool. So I think if you want to continue going over, there's just that couple of
The ends.
questions left, or what is it now? 7, 8, and 9. So three more passages left, which should be pretty
Yeah.
um, straightforward to review.
Mhm.
Um, I looked over your chem phys, and just doing the couple concepts you didn't know. That seems fine. And then bio also looks pretty solid, as we talked about. Just reviewing a couple of things you didn't know again. And then psych soc, we can think about going through some psych soc questions together and trying to apply concepts to um, like the way that they're used in a passage, because you can definitely have the concept and still not quite understand exactly how it's used in the passage.
Yep.
Um, so I would say that we can do that for our next session, which might involve some maybe world. I don't know. We'll figure out some kind
Next.
of focused psych soc, taking the there's like a way to kind of go through where we can kind of interrogate each question choice, and I'll kind of show you how I like to approach those questions. So
Okay.
we can start by going over the ones that you had marked from this exam, or like, I guess like explaining my logic for the ones from this exam. And then we can do some like new practice problems.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Um, I can meet, let's see, like Friday if you want to meet again this week, or we can meet next week, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
I could do Monday.
Okay. Monday sounds good. You want to do like 10 a.m.?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll hide the chicken this time. I don't know where he put it.
Hiding it from you.
Probably. My mom got him 2 different ones. I'm like, you didn't think the first one was plenty? She's like, no, he likes them.
Of course. Can't make your life any easier.
Never. All
Okay,
right. So Monday at 10 a.m.
sounds good. And in the meantime, you can finish going over these cars, get to your world study, whatever is working. Yeah, I think that's a solid plan.
Fabulous. That's
Okay,
the plan. Well, thank you.
I'll see you on Monday.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
All right, bye bye.